Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Mills. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm with Global Innovation Institute, and as most of you know, Global Innovation Institute is the world's leading professional certification, business accreditation, and membership organization in the field of innovation. And we host a monthly webinar every 3 or 4 weeks with different guests to present some of the world's leading thoughts on corporate innovation and strategy and innovation practice and so forth. So today our guest is Dr. Kaihan Krippendorf, and I would like to introduce Kaihan to you, tell you some things about him, and after I introduce him, I'm going to turn it over to Kaihan to present to us today. So in the way of introduction, Kaihan Krippendorf is the founder and CEO of Outthinker, a growth strategy consulting firm that prepares businesses for an agile, digital, purpose-driven world. He is also the founder of the Outthinker Strategy Network, an exclusive network of chief strategy officers from large organizations, providing those executives with the opportunity to take part in intimate, candid, and forward-looking conversations with a curated network of peer executives and the world's most sought-after disruptive thinkers. Kaihan is also the host of the Outthinkers podcast, a growth strategy podcast that he hosts each week, speaking with forward-thinking strategists and innovators who are challenging the status quo, leading the future of business, and shaping our world. He is also an advisory board member to high-growth startups in the spaces of IoT, human-machine collaboration, blockchain-powered transportation, international food processing and exporting, and sustainability-focused products and lifestyle B Corps. And believe it or not, he still finds time on occasion to teach at business schools around the U.S. and internationally, including at New York University, Florida International University, and Wharton Executive Education. Kaihan is also a best-selling author of 5 books and related articles about applying mental models to strategy. Most recently, the Edison Award-nominated Driving Innovation from Within, a Guide for Internal Entrepreneurs. He's also a regular contributor to Fast Company and other major business media outlets. He was recognized by Thinkers 50 as one of the top thinkers in the world to look out for and as one of the 8 most influential innovation thought leaders in the world. And in 2019, he was ranked by Thinkers 360 as the #1 global innovation thought leader and the #1 global business strategy thought leader. Kaihan began his career with McKinsey & Company before founding his own firm, Outthinker. In his work, he's known for facilitating powerful conversations that create strategic clarity and yield actionable and impactful ideas for his clients. He has developed the proprietary strategy framework, the Outthinker process, and created assessments for it. He's developed consulting relationships with over 10% of Fortune 500 firms, and he's trained over 10,000 executives in strategic and innovative thinking. His proprietary process, delivered through a network of business coaches and partner consulting firms, has been shown to consistently accelerate business growth by 100 to 120%. In fact, his growth strategies and innovations have generated over $2.5 billion in new revenue from many of the world's most recognizable business organizations, including Aetna, BNY Mellon, Citibank, Johnson & Johnson, L'Oreal, TIAA, Microsoft, and United Technologies, amongst others. Kaihan holds degrees from the University of Pennsylvania School of Engineering, Wharton, Columbia, and London Business School, as well as a doctorate in strategy from Abo Akademi University in Finland. With a mother from Bangladesh and a father from Germany, Kaihan brings a very holistic, diverse, and global perspective to everything he does. He speaks 3 languages and has lived or spent significant periods of time in Asia, Africa, Latin America, Europe, and the Pacific. He presently lives in Greenwich, Connecticut, with his wife and 3 children. Ultimately, Kaihan has made a commitment to helping organizations and individuals thrive in today's era of fast-paced, disruptive technological change. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kaihan Krippendorf today. Kaihan, the floor is all yours now.
Anthony, thank you so much for having me, and it's such an honor and pleasure to get to meet and interact with innovators and change makers from all around the world. I'm so impressed by the breadth, geographic breadth of your reach and the work that you do. So I'm going to walk through some slides and we'll leave about 10 minutes for Q&A, but please feel free to ask questions as we go along in chat. Anthony will be monitoring those, and you're welcome to interrupt me anytime, Anthony, if there's something to address. I have more material that I want to share with you, especially getting a chance to interact with a community of trained innovation experts, so that it is kind of like you're kind of like my people, and so I want to share everything that I can. So if you anyway, I've got a lot of content that I think is important to share. So what I want to talk about is outthinking the competition. I want to familiarize you with this process, the Outthinker process. I don't really have consulting to sell. I don't have like anything that I'm asking you to do or step into after this. At the end of this, I'm going to give you a copy of the presentation, a copy of a workbook to follow this process, both a PDF format and Excel format, free access to an interactive online course. All of that for you. We at Outthinker try to be very open source here. And so my mission here is just to arm you with some tools that maybe you find useful to add to your toolkit as you innovate for yourself and for your organization and for your clients. So this is a process that we developed over the last 15 years, and we've been refining it and simplifying it over that time. And it works. So I want to first introduce this idea of what we call a fourth option. So in ancient times in China, the way that wealthy people entertained themselves is they would race horses. And there was one general who was frustrated because he kept losing to the prince. So he asked an advisor for help, and the advisor observed some of these matches, and he concluded this is a very simple game. You race 3 sets of horses, your fastest, your medium, your slowest. The best 2 out of 3 win. As a result of which, there are 3 ways to win this game. You either need better horses, better riders, or to provide better care and feeding. In modern terminology, these would be key success factors. And your client or your manager or your CEO might say, oh, I've been in this industry for a long time. What we need is better horses, better riders, better care and feeding. So he says, the problem with this is if you play following these key success factors, you're going to lose every time, because the prince has more money than you, general. He can buy better horses, he can hire better riders, he can provide better care and feeding. And what I'd like you to do is challenge the prince to one last competition, because I see what we're going to today call a fourth option. I see an option beyond these options. I'd like you to challenge the prince to the last and final competition. Let's do it a week from Thursday. Really raise the stakes, invite the entire town, all of your family. The general's a little nervous about this, but he trusts his advisor. And so a week from Thursday, this is like the World Cup of horse racing. The town is empty. Everyone's in the stadium talking, excited about this race that's about to start. The drums roll, indicating that the race is going to start. Everyone goes quiet. And then the strategic sequence begins. The prince prepares his best horses and they line up the gate. The general prepares his best horses. And the advisor says, wait, if you play the game you've always played, you know what the outcome will be. In order to change the outcome of the game, we need to change the way we play the game. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to race your slowest horses first. And this is an example of a fourth option. You do something unexpected, beyond the obvious, and competitors have difficulty responding to it. We're looking for patterns like this, where someone expects us to do 3 things and we do the 4th thing. Why this metaphor? I found this metaphor of the fourth option to be very sticky, let's say. So you're welcome to use it. It's simply a metaphor because 3 represents the point at which others stop thinking. When I was at McKinsey, they trained me to break everything down into 3s and 3 sets of 3s and 3 sets of 3s. It gives you the sense that we have a complete set of options we're choosing from. Great orators repeat in 3s. So when you notice that your client or your manager, your CEO, or whoever that is settled on a set of options, what we want to do is help them look for a 4th option. This fourth option is the source of all advantages and really the source of companies that win through innovation. This is Ray Kroc, founder of modern day McDonald's. He said, my attitude is that competition can try to copy my style, but they can't read my mind. So I'll leave them 1.5 miles behind. So he won and created one of the largest companies in the world by unleashing a flow of ideas. Ideally, ideas that competitors won't copy quickly, because those are more valuable than ideas that competitors copy quickly. And innovators that I've studied, when I look at how they describe their thinking process, they all describe this kind of idea. They don't necessarily call it a fourth option, but they'll say things like Gandhi, who said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So he's saying that we want to do something that our competitors, in this case, his competition, if you will, was colonial Britain, that had occupied his country. His mission was to get them out of India. And he knew if he picked up arms, that would be a strategy that they recognized and could respond to. So instead, he chose a strategy that they would instead ignore and laugh at. I believe disruptive innovation theory is a permutation of this same concept. You know, in disruptive innovation theory, you target a customer segment that your competitors view as inferior. You offer them a product or service that they view as inferior. And so they let you have that. That becomes the beachhead that you start learning from. If you're familiar with blue ocean strategy, I think this is another permutation of this. In the blue ocean strategy, you don't compete for the marketplace for which there already is competition, the red ocean. Instead, you look to find new oceans where there is no competition. Those are the blue oceans. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War 2,500 years ago. He had a term that was translated into taking whole. Taking whole basically says you ideally attack your enemy in a way that they just open the gates. They let you take them. There's no loss. There's no bloodshed. You see, I believe this is one strategic concept that's been around for millennia. We've just changed what we've called it over the years, right? So when I say, let's try the fourth option, I'm not tied to that being the truth. I think any of these things, none of these things are the truth. They're simply terminologies that help us innovate. This fourth option concept is the source of all competitive advantages. In sports, before 1968, there were 3 ways to go over high bars. Then in 1968, Dick Fosbury did this. He goes over the high bar backwards. This is a strategic innovation, if you will, a technique innovation, and he wins the Olympics. It takes the competition 8 years to copy him. 8 years later, 90% of high jumpers are doing this new technique called the Fosbury flop. So you could say this is an innovation in sports. What I like about this picture is that it illustrates 2 important points about innovation. One is that it's not about the technology. Like the technology that enabled us to go over high bars when he went over in 1968, we were already laying down that technology, which are just pads put on the other side of high bars. We were already laying those down 15 years before. So the question begs, look, why didn't someone do this before? And what I propose enables people to adopt these new technologies or the possibilities that these technologies create for us is not an understanding of the technology, the existence of the technology, but often the understanding and adoption of the concepts around the technology. So blue ocean strategy is a concept. Taking whole is a concept. Fourth option is a concept. Disruption is a concept. It's not until we settle on the concepts, in this case, it was the Fosbury flop. Before we had that concept, you could not call up a coach and say, hey, can you teach me the Fosbury flop, right? You cannot find a book on the Fosbury flop. There's no conference on the Fosbury flop. So what we're talking about here is what are the emerging concepts around innovation that we can introduce into the dialogues in which we just explore possibilities and choose options. What are those emerging concepts? So I'm going to introduce you to what we think are 5 emerging concepts for you to use when innovating. And the second thing is the fourth option almost always looks impossible, right? Before 1968, there was massive agreement that this would not work. Every gold medal winner until then had gone over forward. Every trainer of every Olympic athlete had trained them to go over forward. So hopefully out of this, you're going to generate some ideas that could be fourth options. And if your reaction to that is, this will never work. It hasn't worked. It is inconsistent with what we know works. That is the only sign that potentially it's a fourth option. Because remember, we want competitors to ignore and laugh at us, and they will ignore and laugh at us because this looks impossible. And also, I would propose that now is the perfect time to come up with fourth options, because the rules are changing. When the rules change, it opens up the possibility of introducing fourth options. Sticking with sports for just one more example, let's look at the average height of the last 5 NBA most valuable players. From 1960, well, the 5 years leading 1960, so 1956 to 1960, up until 1980, what we see clearly is the best players are getting taller and taller and taller for 2.5 decades. Something weird happens in the next 5 years. Suddenly, the best players are shorter. Now, we might think that this is a blip, but actually it starts looking more like a new normal. But actually, you know what? It's not a new normal. It is a new trend. The best players are actually getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So we want to understand what happened around 1980. And what happened was the rules changed. The three-point shot was introduced. And some players adapted to the new game, others did not. Some teams adapted to the new game, others did not. And for us, for our companies, for our clients, the rules are changing. As Anthony mentioned, one of our core business activities at Outthinker is we coordinate a peer group of chief strategy officers of large enterprises, and they get together and they talk about what are the trends and concerns and issues, opportunities that are most important for their companies to be thinking about. And we see surprising parallels across lots of industries, from financial services to manufacturing to media, to technology, a lot of the same trends, and you'll probably recognize these. Our companies and our clients are thinking about the next generation of customers and employees. They're thinking about what's next in digital transformation. Our customers expect greater personalization. There are tech substitutes that are making their way across swaths of industries. There is the growing risk of cybersecurity. There is the adoption of decentralized finance and data, or blockchain based technologies and systems, artificial intelligence and big data, P2P and platform business models proliferating, IoT devices getting less and less expensive and more prevalent, regulatory and macro political uncertainty, and a general reduction of loyalty of both customers and employees. And what COVID has really done is accelerated those trends. So we're not facing one three-point shot, we're facing multiple three-point shots, which puts us in this cusp of this moment where we get to choose, how are we going to play the game? Are we going to keep playing the old game, or are we going to learn the new game? Do we keep going over the high bar forward, or do we learn to go over backward? So assuming that you're part of the Global Innovation Network, GINI is Global Innovation Institute. The N always, like, I love that you put the N in, but I keep wanting to come up with a term for N. So, you're assuming that you're part of this because you want to play the new game. You want to be part of creating the new game. And you have a lot of tools and certifications in trainings that you've gone through to arm yourself. And this is a tool to help you and your clients and your companies embrace this new game, to find fourth options. And there are 5 steps to this process. They spell ideas, I-D-E-A-S. That's not a coincidence. That was intentional. I believe all models are wrong, and some are useful. I just put it into this framework so that it's hopefully easy to remember. No magic to this. But this is how it works. We first imagine, we sit with our client, with our boss, with our managers, and we say, let's envision a distant future, and what do we want to be in that future? Then they're going to want to ideate, but first we dissect our business model and look in non-obvious places. Then we expand our option set. We generate lots of new options. Then we analyze those options and narrow them down, and we do it in a certain way so that we avoid the risk of throwing out the fourth option, which is a very common outcome. And then once we have our new innovation, what we want to do is sell it, build buy-in and support for the innovation. If you're familiar with other methodologies, maybe Six Sigma or, other kind of problem solving methodologies, you'll see similar steps here. This, however, is geared specifically to finding breakthrough fourth option ideas inside the context of expanding the growth and profitability of an organization. So what I was going to do, I'm going to introduce you to each of these, kind of lay out the key steps. And so that if you choose to, you can take the workbook, take the course and apply it. My mission really is here that some of you are going to see this and use it and send me an email like 3 years from now saying that this helped you come up with an idea that had a real big impact. Right? That's what I'm playing for here. Excellent. So I'm going to go forward. Anthony, if there are questions that you want me that I should address, just interrupt me.
You're good so far. Carry on.
Great. Okay. So under imagine's like pretty simple, right? It basically says, don't play like a bad chess player, play like a good chess player. I'm a terrible chess player. I've got 3 kids, 12, 14, 16. They beat me all the time, especially my 14-year-old daughter. And what I do is, because honestly, there are lots of other games that I love playing, right? But chess is not one. I like to play them just to spend time with my kids. So my strategy is like this. Let me take my pawns and move them forward toward your king, hopefully getting you to a checkmate. But my daughter, being a better chess player, she does the opposite. She imagines checkmate and then works backward from there to figure out what the near-term move should be. Unfortunately, many of our strategy processes encourage us to play strategizing like a bad chess player, right? We do a SWOT analysis. We look at our current and historical strengths and weaknesses and performance, and then we set goals that look consistent with past performance. And what that does, it removes the necessity of us and our team to think differently because we set goals that are achievable if we do what we did in the past, but a little bit better. In other words, our strategy processes look like this. Where are we today? How did we get here? What are our issues? What are our strengths? And given this, what are our reasonable but stretched set of goals? Instead, what I have found to be very effective is to walk people through 5 steps. Step 1, zoom out into the future and describe the mess, the undesirable but realistic future that will occur if we continue on our current path. Look at the long-term trends, then describe what our ideal outcome is, work backward from there and say, what is the near-term goal that will get us towards the long-term? And then rewrite that near-term goal as a strategic question. And if you decide to use it, you'll get a workbook, and it's actually easy in about 45 minutes to walk through this. But ideally what you've done here is you now defined an impossible question. Impossible meaning we don't have the solution right now. The next step is to now dissect the business model. If you're strategizing with, say, technology people, they will naturally come up with technology ideas. With marketing people to come with marketing ideas, with organizational people to come with people ideas. You give a child a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Like, we all fall victim to this. And so dissect is really about avoiding framing the problem in the obvious way, but thinking about all of the different ways you could frame the problem and strategically choosing how to frame the problem. And what this allows us to do is start innovating in uncommon places. When you start innovating in multiple areas of the business model, that's when the inflection point of growth kicks in. It took Apple 30 years to figure this out. For 30 years, they're struggling, revenue up and down, up and down. It's not till 2002, 2003 that they really start scaling. Amazon started applying this trick much earlier. They started scaling, look, after year 10 or 11, you start seeing a real inflection point, whereas Apple took 32 to 33 to 34 years. And the trick is to innovate across lots of dimensions of the business model. A framework, there are lots of business model frameworks. One that I have developed over the I've been teaching a class on this for the last 10 years, and it's just a very simple framework that is quite powerful. We've used this with chief innovation officers, chief marketing officers, CEOs of large public companies, very sophisticated people. And they will often take this and bring their team together on a whiteboard and think through where they have fourth options. And basically it's positioning, which is who's our core customer and what's our brand mean to them. It's our processes, pricing strategies, promotion, marketing sales strategies, our product and product mixes and attributes, our placement or distribution in channels, the physical experience that we deliver, and our people policies. And I won't go through this because you'll get a copy of this and you can look at it if you want to. But if we look at Amazon, what we see is that they came up with fourth options across across every single one. They're working on innovating across all of these. Placement, for example, all their investment in building that distribution infrastructure to shorten the last mile and get closer to the customer. That's a big part of their strategy, and they're not complacent. They haven't accepted one way of delivering. They are developing and innovating on placement, innovating on people, in user experience, their product and product mix, moving into services. Pricing, for example, prime pricing was something that they introduced, and it's a very simple innovation, but it was maybe the biggest, most valuable innovation that Amazon introduced, because when you get someone to pay $79 for free shipping, suddenly they go from shopping on Amazon and other sites to, I want to buy everything on Amazon to get the most out of that $79. So we want to be looking across all of these areas for innovation. Tesla, similarly, you can break down most highly innovative companies whose innovation programs are successful, resulting in higher performance. And you'll see fourth options across lots of different dimensions. So the thing to do is to sit with your client and say, positioning, product, pricing, physical experience, placement, promotion, processes, and people, which are the areas that we most want to focus on today that will give us the, kind of represent the biggest opportunity for us to innovate in. So after you've done that, you've kind of imagine is sort of a widening conversation on the question. Dissect is then a narrowing conversation on the question. So that's, what do we want the future to be, and how are we going to get there with innovations in product and positioning, let's say. The next two steps are kind of the widening and narrowing conversation on the answer. So we've got question and we've got answer. First, we want to widen the set of options that could be answers. And so what we want to appreciate here is that logic doesn't really help us in the ideation phase. If we look at great chess players like Alexandra Kostinuk, she was the reigning women's world chess champion when I interviewed her. And what she'll do as a marketing stunt, if you saw the Queen's Gambit Netflix series, you saw a scene like this where the main character challenges a whole group to play chess. She lines them up and she just goes from one board to the next and just does her rounds, and she beats them all. She can just look at the board and see the winning move. How does she do that? I mean, and just to translate to what we're talking about here, if you set up a problem and Alexandra understood our business, she would certainly see some option that we don't see. How does she do that? Well, research into expertise, into expert performance gives us a very clear answer, is that she uses patterns rather than logic, and she recognizes more patterns. Master chess players recognize 10 times as many patterns as experts, and grandmasters, twice as many patterns as experts, and grandmasters recognize 10 times as many patterns. So through our experience and through our clients' experience, our managers' experience, we have done something and it worked. Then we did it again and it worked, and that became part of our repertoire. However, inevitably, our playbook is limited because humans have limited short-term working memory capacity. We can remember 7 plus or minus 2 things. So what we want to do is not only go to the patterns that we always use, but start expanding the patterns we use to identify potential options. I believe that fundamentally there are 36 different strategic patterns. This is what the basis of all my work is. My first two books are explanations of these 36. They didn't come from me, they came from another text. I just applied them to business. My doctorate work is on these 36. And suffice it to say, that this is a rich and I believe complete set of strategic patterns. And even if it's not complete, it's still bigger than any of our playbooks. So it is a very useful tool. At the back of the workbook that you'll get, you'll have a description of each of these 36. If you use the Excel version, you'll see all 36. There are also some cool things that I created. I think they're cool, where depending on which P you focus on, like pricing, there are 5 patterns that are good for pricing. Under product, there are 5 patterns that are good for product. And I also created like a stratagem selector. So anyway, if you want to play around with the patterns, but you're never going to go through all 36. Instead, you want to focus in. And so my research says that if you do focus in, there are 5 strategic patterns that are particularly important for us to apply now. And so I'm going to briefly go through each of these, and hopefully they'll get you thinking. If any ideas come up for you, maybe for a problem that you're working on, or a business that you're building, or an innovation that you're designing, if anything comes up, I encourage you to write them down and and create a list. But my main goal is for you to understand these enough so that you can pull them out and use them as a brainstorming tool. The first is move early to the next battleground. Skate to where the puck is going to be rather than where the puck is, right? Like I interviewed Elon Musk soon after he launched SpaceX, and I asked him, why did you take the $150 million that you earned by selling PayPal and invest all of that in building rocket ships? And he said, I just think a future in which anyone can shoot stuff into space is more exciting than one in which only the government can. It sounds like a risky premise to bet your wealth on. So I just asked him if he would walk me through it. And basically his logic went like this. If we think about the next battleground, humans will become interplanetary species. One thing that's stopping us from realizing that is that it costs too much to build and launch a rocket ship. It costs too much because NASA and other governments have monopolies on that part of their space program. If they privatize that part of their space program, we can drive down the cost by 90%, he thought, and move a step closer. So he said, I'm going to build SpaceX as the company designed to take that off of NASA's hands. Soon after I interviewed him, I did a workshop for one of the major U.S. Defense contractors, that make rocket ships. And, they just ignored and laughed at him. There's no way that someone without the experience in the sector could figure this out. And, he beat all of them. He was one of the 3 that won the contract. So this type of long-term thinking used to be the domain only of well-funded large organizations with big R&D budgets, but cycle times are decreasing. And so it creates opportunities for people to move quickly on creating and seizing the future, even if large companies aren't moving on it. So, where is that future? I think one concept that is really helpful to think about where the future might be for our clients is that of proximity. This is a book that I'm writing with Robert Walcott at Kellogg. And his idea is this, that the production and provision of value moves ever closer to the point of demand in time and space. Ultimately, we will reach P equals 0. So I want a soda. It used to be that soda would be manufactured far ahead in time in a bottling plant far away from where I'm drinking it, and then be shipped to me. But this machine mixes the syrup at the point of demand. So we're not shipping mixed syrup. It's cheaper, faster, and provides more variety. This machine over on the right is a refrigerator-sized machine that takes basic elements like carbon and produces drugs at the point of demand. If we can put this on a battlefield or in a rural place in Africa, we don't have to inventory lots of drugs. We can manufacture the drugs we need. This is being funded by DARPA. PillPack, a company that sells created by a second generation pharmacist. He's working at his dad's pharmacy, and he realizes people who have multiple prescriptions have a difficult time in the drugstore because they have to take multiple trips. They take home these bottles, they can't open them, they're confused, the compliance is low. So he said, just one guy without any entrepreneurial experience saying, what does the future look like? The future would be, you do not leave home to get your prescription drugs, they're sent to you. They don't come separated in bottles by the drug. That's not really helpful to me as a patient. They come pre-sorted in little plastic bags. You'll see on the top right side of your screen here. It says 8 a.m. Monday, and these are the 3 drugs that this patient needs to take. He partners with someone else. They go into a competition at MIT, they win, they get some funding, they start operationalizing this model. 6 years later, they sell it to Amazon for $1 billion. So $1 billion in value creation from this kind of simple thinking. Just where is the next battleground? And what can we do to move there early? These are just some thought starters. You don't have to look at each of these, but customer needs, behaviors, technologies. So, that's one pattern. It's kind of an obvious pattern. Isn't innovation and strategy about thinking ahead? Sure it is, but that's one pattern. Another pattern is to coordinate the uncoordinated. Think about power as coming from coordination rather than control. Birds fly in flocks, fish swim in schools, animals travel in herds. They create power and safety by coordinating themselves. When we talk about platform business models, that is a version of coordinating the uncoordinated, because you don't own the rooms, you don't own the cars, you coordinate them. Blockchain technology, which allows us to coordinate things, doesn't have to be currencies. It can be ownership, it can be data. But the concept here is you're not just coordinating the ledgers, you're coordinating the nodes that are coordinating the ledgers. This is like the next iteration of coordinating the uncoordinating, moving to this self-coordinated, decentralized structure. So definitely you can use this in market-facing ways, but you can also do it internally. Haier is a Chinese company that we've been studying quite intensely. They bought GE Appliances 5 years ago. After that acquisition, they were at 15 billion in revenue. Since then, primarily through organic growth, they've grown in 5 years to $32 billion. So doubled from 15 billion to over 32 billion. And why? What do they assign their success to? Is coordinating internally differently. Instead of organizing themselves as a hierarchy, they broke down that hierarchy into 4,000 micro enterprises. Each micro enterprise has its own CEO. That CEO can get voted out if he or she's not doing a good job. And then they thought, well, what about the support functions? What about R&D? What about finance? What about marketing, right? They said those should also be micro enterprises. And so the IT department gets split up into a few different micro enterprise IT departments, and they have their own P&L, and they have to sell their services to the internal micro enterprises. And if they're not providing value, then you know what? That micro enterprise doesn't need to buy from them, and their P&L, their profit naturally declines, and eventually they go away. So they kind of moving from a hierarchy into an internal ecosystem. So many examples of this, but the core question is, who or what would you like to coordinate? That makes sense. So hopefully you, your company, your client are starting to behave differently, right? Because they're playing for tomorrow rather than today. They're coordinating rather than controlling. The next one that we see successful companies adopting, we call it force a two-front battle, which basically says, you force competitors onto a two-front battle by not defining yourself by your industry. A couple examples. Howard Bihar, former president of Starbucks, Howard Schultz's right-hand man through much of the scaling. He shared with me that the moment where they really started seeing fourth options, or a lot of their fourth options came from, was when they realized we are not in the coffee business serving people. We are in the people business serving coffee. So we're not in the coffee business, we are in the people business. Tony Hsieh, former CEO of Zappos, now deceased, said, we are not in the shoe business, we are in the customer service business, and we happen to sell shoes. Do you see the parallel here? You don't define yourself by your industry. 2 guys left Google, and they were thinking about what to do next. Unfortunately, the nephew of one of them got cancer. And this gentleman helped the nephew navigate through the visits with his oncologist, and he realized that oncology practices were really messed up because they didn't digitize treatment information, so they couldn't see patterns between treatments and outcomes. And if you went from one doctor to another, that second doctor didn't easily know what your first doctor did. So they created Flatiron Health to improve lives by learning from the experience of every cancer patient. They sell what looks like practice management software. Well, it is practice management software, but they say we're not a practice management software company, we're a data company. And we use that data to improve outcomes. Of course, we're fully compliant, protect patient confidentiality. But what we'll do is we'll give you insights, Mr. Oncologist or Miss Oncologist, on what treatments are working, what's not working. Then they go to the next oncologist and say, we'll give you the same service, but we're going to give you insights into what other oncologists are doing so you can improve your outcomes. They grow this over 7 years. They change the way the FDA treats treatment data and sell it to Roche Pharmaceuticals after 7 years for $2.1 billion. It's a very powerful pattern to look at. What business do your people say they're in? They probably define it by their industry and then say, what business are we really in? Not the industry, but what business are we really in? We're in the data business. We're in the customer service business. We're in the people business, right? And we happen to be in software. We happen to be in shoes. We happen to be in coffee. And how does that kind of company behave differently? Peter Drucker also said that strategy is the answer to the question, what business are you in? And he says it's never an easy question to answer. So it's a very powerful tool, if you will. The next one is be good. And I'm going to have to just change my sharing here because I am going to play a video. Give me 1 second. Or maybe I just won't do it. All right, I'm going to reshare. I thought I could just do a new share, but I don't see how to do that. Anyway, I'm going to stop my sharing and just reshare. Share sound, Optimus for video clip. Okay, cool. Sorry, I thought I could make that smooth. Okay, so be good basically says that we are moving away from a paradigm in which we believe that corporations exist to maximize shareholder value. We're realizing that if you just focus on shareholder value maximization, it creates resistance to your growth. And a better strategy is one in which your growth is good for multiple stakeholders. When your growth is good for the community, employees, the government, the country, the environment, the world, and thereby shareholders, that is the ultimate strategy because then you have no competition. What I'm not saying is it's a good thing to do good. I think it is. But what I'm saying is even if all you care about is profit, and if you take a long-term perspective, the smart thing to do is to do good in the world. Large companies are waking up to this. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, is also the chairman of a group called the Business Roundtables. It's a community or network of the 100 CEOs of the largest US companies. And they looked at what the purpose of a firm is about 3 years ago, and they concluded together that it's no longer that a firm is there to serve shareholders. Major employers are investing in workers and communities. So workers and communities first, because they know it is the only way to be successful over the long term. But I think a lot of these large companies are focusing on the tip of the iceberg where they are aligning their mission and messaging. And we have opportunities to actually align the business model and investor base that is kind of going deeper. Companies like this, a lot of companies are built on the Tom Shoes model. You buy shoes and we donate shoes. In this case, you buy beer, and for every liter of beer that we sell, we enable 100 liters of fresh water access to water poor geographies. 30% of food generated in the world is wasted. And yet we have people starving. So they're really interesting innovations that are trying to identify where food is about to go bad and match it to demand. These two are examples, just help people find discounts on food that is going to go bad soon. And companies that have food like grocery stores or restaurants, they can sell it at a discount, just get it into people's stomachs. I buy these gift cards for my children because it's important to me that they grow up with financial literacy skills. I did not. My wife and I did not. So we're both first generation here in the United States. Our parents didn't have a lot of money. I lived on social welfare. I had free lunch given to me in school. We're very blessed to live now in one of the most expensive zip codes in the United States. We're doing absolutely fine financially. But when I graduated from college, I took out that credit card that I shouldn't have taken. I took that trip that I shouldn't have gone on, right? So I lost a couple of years, and I'm committed that my kids don't lose those years as well. And so I buy them these gift cards, and I'm just going to show you a short video of my daughter explaining why she decided to take her gift card and invest the money in Amazon.
What you invest
in? Amazon. And the Amazon thing went up 91.67% higher.
Wow. For how long?
I don't know. And I got $9.17 more.
Nice. Yeah. You made $9.17 without doing anything.
Yeah.
Wasn't that nice to make money without doing anything?
But look at how it goes.
Wow. Why did you invest in Amazon?
Because I like Amazon. Because I get toys and movies. Amazon Prime there.
So you figure it's a good company?
Yeah. Plus they bought Whole Foods.
Oh, good.
And I had it before they bought Whole Foods, so it went like, hello.
So, I just love that. In that case, it was a 12-year-old girl a couple of years ago talking about Amazon, not as a place to just buy stuff, but also as an investor. And she understands what the impact was of them acquiring Whole Foods. So how can you create strategic power by doing good? Another way to look at this is, what is a social problem out there that we want to find a profitable solution to? What can we stop doing that's bad? What can we start doing that's good? How can we better communicate the good that we do already? And how can we align our business model behind doing good? And the last pattern, and then I'll just talk about the analyze phase and the sell phase, but the last pattern under expand, which is step 3, is really one of my favorite. Create something out of nothing. It basically says we tend to play the game of innovation following a rule that doesn't exist. The rule is you got to play with the pieces on the board, right? You can't take a queen out of your back pocket and put it next to my king. But there are other types of games. Go, for example, is a popular kind of analog to chess in some countries in Asia. And in Go, the rules are the opposite. In Go, you cannot move the pieces. You can only add and remove pieces. So what would it look like to play innovation with like you do Go? Well, one thing you can do is you can add, what would you like to add to the game? You could add new customers. Tony Fernandez did this. He quit his job in 2001 as an accountant. He bought an airline. It cost him 27 cents, 1 ringgit, because it was bankrupt. And it's now the second largest discount airline in the world. His core idea was, let's not compete for airline customers. Let's compete for non-airline customers. Add them to the game. This, by the way, I think is the pattern of blue ocean. This is the blue ocean pattern. I've gotten to know Renee Mauburn pretty well now, and this is kind of a big core pattern in her work. So what can we add to the game? Where do we see non-consumption? How can we unlock non-consumption? Whenever we see non-consumption, it is likely there, meaning people are not consuming for one of 4 reasons. Number 1, price. They can't afford it, or they don't think they can afford it. Access. They can't get to it. Know-how. They don't know how to use it or engage it, or they're nervous about or overwhelmed by it. Or time. I've got a full-time job and I don't have time to access it. So creating something out of nothing, creating new categories. Gatorade's created the sports drink category. They're selling salty water on football fields for years, and they're growing and growing and growing. And Pepsi and Coke don't see them growing because there's no line item on their market share report for sports drinks. Same thing that Red Bull did with energy drinks. Really multi-fold examples of this. One thing that I like doing with clients, and a lot of our members are exploring this, is as a service, as a category, right? Salesforce created software as a service. Netflix, entertainment as a service. Rolls-Royce has been selling propulsion as a service. Lots of companies are moving from selling products to selling a subscription service like Blue Apron, or you've got mobility as a service. We have members that are looking at cattle as a service and safety as a service. So what would you like to add to the game? That's the fifth pattern. And so if you walk your clients through, or yourself through, or your company through these 5 questions: where's the next battleground? What would we like to coordinate? What business are we really in? How can we profitably do good in the world? And what would we create out of nothing? You'll generate a lot of ideas. We aim for at least 40 ideas. Typically, we get to 150 to 200 ideas in Expand. And so I'm just going to close by describing Analyze, mentioning Sell, and then we'll have time for questions. So you generate all these ideas, and then what do we do with these ideas? Well, usually what we want to do is we want to throw out the 4th option because it seems impossible. Impossible is a word to be found only in the dictionary of fools, is what Napoleon said. And so it's really important in the process to carve out that impossible idea and take a tip from Albert Einstein, who said, it's not that I'm so smart. It's just that I stay with problems longer. So stay with that seemingly impossible idea a little bit longer. 3 steps to this, super easy. Have your client plot every idea. Is it easy or difficult to execute? If we did it, would it be high or low impact? You're going to find some waste of time ideas. Get rid of those. You'll have a nice list of tactics. Save those, and every month or every quarter, pick a few off and go and execute them. When I first started this methodology, I naturally thought you should look at winning moves. They're easy, high impact. But what we find over and over again is that the 4th option appears in the 4th quadrant. It appears to be a crazy idea. So it's really important to spend, even if it's just 10 minutes, working on a crazy idea and exploring how can we remove the barriers that make this look difficult and turn it into a winning move. That is what is going to surprise your competition. And from there, you pick your strategic priorities. Sell, I'm not going to talk a lot about Sell. This is all about stakeholder management, building adoption, recognizing the fact that innovators are often disbelieved from the get-go. James Lancaster proved that if you gave sailors 2 teaspoons of lemon juice every day, they wouldn't die of scurvy. It took the British Navy 250 years to adopt this innovation. Just because we've got a great idea doesn't mean that people are going to automatically see it. So imagine, step in the future, work backward, dissect, take the 8 Ps and choose strategically how to frame the problem, expand, use those 5 patterns. And then if you have time, you have 31 other patterns to play with to generate lots of potential options. Analyze, sort through, work on a crazy idea, choose those options, and then sell your idea. And when you reach that innovation, when you get adoption of that innovation, they are going to laugh at you, right? Because your slowest horses are going to be so slow that none of them will cross the line before the prince's fastest horses. And your family will laugh at you. Your father will get up and leave. Your kids will hide their head in shame. But if you have the fortitude to play the next round, your fastest horses will beat the prince's medium horses. So it's 1-to-1. And then in the 3rd heat, your medium horses will beat the prince's slowest horses. And for the first time ever, the general wins. So I know I went through a lot here. This QR code, especially for you as being part of the Global Innovation Institute, it gives you free access to the presentation, to 2 versions of the workbook, to an online course. There's also another course and workbook there for my Driving Innovation from Within, which is really a methodology to get ideas through established organizations, intrapreneurship, if you will. Also links to our podcast and other tools, all open source and free for you. So I know I talked a lot.
That's okay. Very good. Excellent. And I would encourage everyone, by the way, to check out Kaihan's podcast and a lot of awesome guests he has there. Kaihan, we do have a number of questions in the chat screen. I don't know if you have that in front of you, or otherwise I can hit them off here for you. I think we started up there with Arlen saying, how do you strategize in a post-COVID VUCA world where virtually everything is unpredictable?
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of tips there is, you want to create a lot of optionality in your strategy. And so like two tricks there are, and there's probably more people here probably have even better ideas, but what I found is instead of making like a 1-year plan and a 5-year plan, you make a 6-month plan and a 10-year plan. So you zoom really far out. John Hagel has this term, zoom out, zoom in. And so you strategize that way. You have your North Star and you can more easily tack towards it, right? Yeah, that's one thing. And in order to do that, also, it's really helpful to adopt more kind of an agile approach where you're not proving, planning, and then executing, but rather you're acting, learning from that action, and then building on it. That act, learn, build approach.
Right. Yeah, it becomes a very emergent strategy in that process.
Yes.
You have your strategic direction, but there's a lot of emergent learning process involved in that.
Yes.
Mark had, see if I can read this, or maybe you can read it. Do you have a sense of a winning Fosbury Fops is in a fourth option and not Fops that flop? That's a tongue twister.
Yes.
How to generate the former and avoid the latter.
I think at least internal corporate innovation, you can expect a 15% success rate. Jeff Bezos says, if you have a 1 in 10 chance of 100 times payoff, you got to take that bet every time, but you got to be ready to lose 9 times out of 10. So I think certainly a part of the problem is being better at identifying the flops that are going to be flops as opposed to winners. But a big part of it is getting comfortable with that success rate being an acceptable success rate.
Right.
Success rate of entrepreneurship is low. The chances that you're going to get into the MBA, low. The chances that, there's so many things that we pursue that there's a high failure rate for, that should be okay.
Right. And in the book, The Founder's Mentality by Zook and Allen, they talk about one of those things is relentless experimentation. And that's one of the things that founders do is just relentlessly experimenting and trying things. I've been told that Amazon runs 30,000 business experiments a month, just as part of the whole learning process. So yeah, that's a big part of it, is that whole experimentation process. I think Mark also,
our members really like is Dan Toma.
Yeah.
Innovation accounting. A lot of our members found that really helpful for being able to measure the amount of experimentation.
Excellent. Yes, that is a great tool. He did a great job. He and his partner did a great job on that book. Mark Brown also mentioned that biomimicry is a great source for fourth options. We never thought about that, but I think it does sometimes lead us.
So it's like taking patterns or metaphors from biology and applying them
from nature. Yeah, from nature.
From nature. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
That's great.
Yeah. And then he also mentioned, from a musician standpoint, I don't know if you're familiar with Brian Eno's oblique strategies, but the part of the idea is looking at things obliquely from a different perspective. It kind of gets to the same thing as what you presented as well, and Blue Ocean strategy is really just taking a fresh, different look. And I always like to say, are the rules really the rules? Can we just start over and break the rules?
Yeah. Yes.
Kind of like you're talking about.
I think it's helpful to give people a different rule to follow, as opposed to just saying, let's abandon the rules. Because you abandon the rules, like, okay, but where do I go next? That's why we kind of say, let's look inside different boxes rather than thinking outside the box. It sounds like, just a kitschy phrase, but
it's kind of rewriting the rules. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Basically rewriting the rules. Excellent.
And trying different rules, like, a rule doesn't have to be, you can have inconsistent rules and just try them on and see what solution that rule gives you.
And that's part of like this experimentation, is trying those things. And I like to say this is how we poke and prod our way into the future, is trying these things and playing with these rules. So that was all the questions in the chat. Does anyone else have any other questions they want to present? You can either put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask it. We can take a couple more minutes and answer a couple more questions if there are any. If not, then we can wrap it up.
Anthony, could I just ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
Kaihan, absolutely fantastic. Do you have a sense of where the best thinking in the world is taking place about how you generate highly valuable fourth options?
Generate the options.
So the science,
Yeah.
the art and
Yeah.
science of fourth
Yeah.
options. Because
Yeah,
you've
I
got a
guess,
great,
I'm more of a, yeah, I'm more of a kind of a, I guess I am personally trapped in my view of the question, right? And I recognize that, which is applying different patterns and concepts to the problem. And so I kind of more look at who has new concepts. Concepts are tools. So who has a new concept that if we applied it could give us a different solution, as opposed to a different way of generating the options. Does that make sense?
yeah.
And I
I
have a
recognize
sense
it.
too that these different ways come in waves. For example,
yes.
sharing economy. You had a big, huge wave with Uber and Airbnb and a lot of other sharing economy companies kind of came in with a radically different business model, and then that sort of has stabilized. And I think, I don't know, maybe we're not there yet, but in a year or two, maybe there'll be another big wave of things like that.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes they come back under a new name,
Yeah,
right?
they do.
Yeah, I think the core idea is that there's a problem that people realize we can't solve, or a possibility we can't realize with existing concepts.
That's right.
Then a community comes around and plays with different concepts. Do we call it blockchain? Do we call it distributed ledger? Do we call it Web3? Oh, Web3 makes a lot more sense, right? Then that starts getting adopted and is working. Oh, now I can build these new things by using the term Web3. And then that ultimately interacts with the existing knowledge or vocabulary. It's either rejected, it's either subsumed, or it replaces, right? And so there's a constant flow of those emergence of concepts.
There are. And there's one other point I want to make about that, and maybe we'll cycle this as the last thought, is a lot of the things that are new and novel, like Web3 or NFT, is like when they first come out, the way they're being used and applied isn't where the real value lies. The real value is eventually we'll figure out the really good way to use this, the really right way, because buying crappy art of Bored Apes doesn't excite me. But there's going to be some really cool use of NFTs some days. It's going to be super exciting. We just haven't figured that out yet. So I don't laugh them off. What I might laugh off is present uses of them, but the technology lays a foundation for something that's probably going to be profound in a few years. Because, when TV first came out, all we did was broadcast radio shows on it. We didn't know what to do with TV. And it's the same thing happening. The same thing happens with these waves of new technologies. Any thoughts on that, Kaihan?
I agree 100%. I agree with that. If you listen to some of the Web3, podcasts, they say this all the time. It's like, we don't know what the use case is. This is so early.
Yeah.
But I think exactly I think that's a great meta. I haven't used that, but the fact that TV was first, just broadcasting radio.
I stole that, by the way, from Mike Bechtel at Deloitte.
It was great.
Mike.
It's great.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful having you here with us, Kaihan, today, and having everyone on with us. And for all those who will be watching this after the fact on the recording, we hope you get as much value out of it too. Feel free to check out Kaihan on the web and the Outthinkers podcast.
LinkedIn is good for me.
LinkedIn as well. And feel free, of course, to check out Global Innovation Institute. And we'll see you on our next webinar in a few weeks. Goodbye, everyone.
Great.
Take care.
I see the links in code aren't working. I'll get you a proper link.
Yeah, we'll distribute that to everyone afterwards as well.
Yep.
All right.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.